Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Wanted to seek the blessings of Radha Madhav, Radha Damodar, Radha Shyam Sundar Krishna, Balaram Bal Gopal, Ramachandra Bhagwan ki. Jagannath Baladev Subhadramani, Nrsimhadev, Gaunitai, Srila Prabhupada, Guru Maharaj, and the assembled devotees. So, in their former births, this is continuing with the Damodar Leela. We're talking about the divinity of Krishna, how even in the midst the Damodar pastime, he shows his divinity. And this is text number 26 of chapter 9, 10th canto. In their former birth, these two sons, known as Nalakuver and Manigriva, were extremely opulent and fortunate. But because of pride and false prestige, they did not care about anyone, and thus Narad Muni cursed them to become trees. So Krishna remembers the past life of these demigods. They were the sons of Kuber. So Kuber is the treasurer of the demigods, very wealthy, perhaps the wealthiest personality in the heavens. And they lived a carefree life of opulence. So when the father is rich, then the sons get carried away with that opulent life and sense enjoyment. Unlike their father, who dutifully manages the wealth of both demigods and men, Nalakuvera and Manigriva squander their time loitering in the Chaitra Ratha garden. So, intoxicated and decorating themselves with jewels, they enjoyed the company of young girls. They were intoxicated not just by the Varuni drink, but also by false pride, thinking themselves unconquerable as the sons of Kuver. Generally, when wealth comes, pride comes along with it. And this is one of the problems that is faced. Once they were enjoying with the Apsaras within the holy waters of Ganga. Due to arrogance, the demigods had abused the privilege granted them by Lord Shiva. So this was Lord Shiva's place. And these two devatas, they took advantage of Lord Shiva's kindness. They committed the offense of using a sacred place for sense gratification. Without notice, Narad Muni suddenly appeared. He was absorbed in thoughts of Krishna's childhood pastimes. When the Apsaras noticed Narad, so the Apsaras are these heavenly damsels, they immediately covered their naked bodies and warned the demigods to do the same. However, the demigods were too intoxicated to hear or understand the warnings given by the girls to cover themselves. So they remained naked in front of Narad Muni. So Narad Muni thought the pride of the two demigods needs to be curbed so that they can become eligible for bhakti. Thus I will curse them. So his curse is actually a blessing because he wanted them to go towards bhakti. Although it was an offense on the part of Narad to curse demigods, yet he also wanted to give the opportunity to these two demigods to get direct vision of Krishna. Narad expressed anger at the two demigods, not just at their ignorance, but also at their pride. Nalakuver and Manigriva didn't seem to care, remained proud and indignant. Narad cursed them to become trees. However, Narad wanted the demigods to advance spiritually. So these are the two demigods, the damsels, they covered themselves, but the demigods were too arrogant, Manigriva and Nalakuver. And there's the glorious Narad Muni. Therefore, even in the bodies of the trees, he would allow them to be fully conscious of their past offenses, also remembering Narad's teachings, which he expressed to them for their spiritual upliftment. So that's in the 10th canto, 10th chapter, the chapter after the chapter that we are looking at now, verses 8 to 23. And to be aware of their surrounding. So they had quite a few benedictions, even as bodies, as having body of a tree. So they would be aware of what they've done. They would remember Narad's teachings, and they'll be very much aware of their surroundings as well. Normally, trees not so much aware because they are subconscious, hardly conscious. This was unlike normal trees. In this way, they progress to pure devotion. Their progress to pure devotion would be unimpeded. Narad thought, I cannot give them a curse that does not result in bhakti. So devotee's interest is always Krishna, even when he's angry and perhaps angry at somebody. He gives a curse, but it's always going to be in relation to Krishna because he's a devotee. When the demigods heard the curse, in one sense, they were relieved, as it could have been worse. Narad could have cursed them to become demons. However, they made one request. Oh Lord, your punishment is suitable. However, if we must be trees, please allow us to take birth in the holy land of Vrindavan by drinking Yamuna water, by standing in Raj's soil, by being in the company of desire trees. We will obtain the seed of pure devotion. This is a really phenomenal request. Narad was pleased. He completed the curse by informing the demigods that Krishna was to appear on earth. After 20,000 years, they would stand in the courtyard of his father's residence. So this is a phenomenal blessing. 20,000 years is nothing if we consider how long we may have been in this material world. Millions of lifetimes, billions of lifetimes, who knows? After witnessing Krishna's pastimes as infant, the Lord would personally deliver them from the curse. Before the Apsara's unbelieving eyes, Nalakuver and Manigriva disappeared from Kailash, appeared in far away Gokul as twin saplings. Narad turned towards the Apsaras, who were motionless in fear of being cursed, but Narad simply gave them a warning glance. Although they had behaved indecently, they had shown shame and remorse. They witnessed the activities. They witnessed the activities of Narad. So they saw the cursing. And the seed of devotion was planted in their hearts. And eventually they would excel as Vaishnavis amongst celestials. So they actually, by hearing Narad Muni's pravachan to the Nalkuver and Managriva, they became very convinced about devotional service. And seeing Narad Muni's behavior and action towards the devatas who insulted him, but he blessed them with the association of Krishna. So they became Vaishnavis, they became devotees. Narad was on the way to Vaikuntha to see Lord Vishnu. But having cursed devotees of Lord Shiva, he decided instead to go to Badrikaksham and disclose his heart and mind to Narayan Rishi, Narayan Rishi. Having relieved the history, so Krishna went through that history of how the two demigods came to become trees in Gokul. Krishna knew that the initiative was now his. Narad had promised the devatas that the Lord would free them from his curse. And Krishna, duty bound to keep the promise of his devotee, would act according to Narad's will. He thought to himself, Krishna thought to himself, Narad is very dear to me. For his sake, I will free the demigods, bless them with supreme devotion, and send them back to their abode. So only because of Narad. The Lord is duty bound. The Lord is tied down by the promise of Narad, because Narad is a great devotee. Leaning forward, Damodar began to slowly crawl on his hands and knees. His friends watched. They were like spellbound audience of a drama, too enthralled to move or speak. So they couldn't actually move. They couldn't come close to Krishna. They were watching from a little distance. Sometimes Damodar pulled the motor, sometimes the motor moved on its own. Both the rope and motor were spiritual forms and could act according to their own will. Both wanted to serve Krishna in their own way. Slowly, the distance between Damodar and the trees was closing. Intently gazing at his destination, Damodar took another few effortless steps while the motor positioned itself between the two trees. For the first time since they had appeared, the demigods felt the touch of the Supreme Lord via the conduit of the rope and the motor. They shivered in ecstasy. The Gopas were still up the hill, chatting and joking and fully enjoying Damodar's adventures. The two trees felt an intolerable pressure leaning against them. Then, gradually, gracefully, the stately urgent trees were uprooted. As the trees fell, their branches and trunks did not touch Damodar. The sound created was terrible. The first sound was the cracking of the trees being uprooted, and the second was the crash of their hitting the ground. The sound was so loud that it caused the residents of Gokul to faint in shock. Only Krishna's friends were unaffected. Covering their ears with their hands, they continued to sit where they were, calm and fearless. But when they tried to stand in order to help Krishna, they were unable to. Yoga Maya had immobilized them. They couldn't move. Krishna needed some time alone to deliver Nalakuvera and Manigriva. They would have got in the way. They wouldn't have understood. And this was a conversation between just those two demigods and Krishna, which had to take place. So the boys could not enter that conversation. Thus the boys remained curiously immobile, but able to cast wondering glances at each other. Krishna stood between the fallen trees and laughed just to show his immense progress to the Gopas. The thin rope for churning yogurt assumed such strength by the Lord's mercy. So this is very interesting. Remember, he's just tied by two little ropes. These are the original ropes which were in the hair of Yashoda Mai. And with those two little ropes and this wooden motor, he managed to fell trees which were 20,000 years old. And these trees are huge. Seated on the ground with his legs spread before him, Krishna entertained himself by flicking the rope and watching it wave to the motor. He laughed to see the ropes dancing. Although Krishna could uproot the powerful urgent trees, he was unable to free himself of his mother's rope of affection. So we can see how strong the love of the mother is. He could take down the two trees, but he could not free himself from the mortar because his mother had tied the knot of love. Suddenly, the two effulgent forms of Nalakuvera and Manigriva emerged from the fallen trees. There you go. The two devatas have emerged. Although they had been naked at the time of being cursed, they were now richly attired in celestial clothes and ornaments and crowns. Narad had ensured that they would not be unclothed when appearing before the Lord. The impact of a devotee is so great. He will think of everything. He doesn't want the Lord to witness any craziness or experience any disturbance. So Narad Muni had the devatas fully dressed up. The demigods rose in the air, and their striking beauty radiated splendor throughout the surroundings. The demigods thought, "Here is the Supreme Lord for whom we have been waiting for so long." They bowed before the Lord. Krishna continued to play with the rope and mortar. So he was a 2-year-old baby, just playing with the rope. And there's these two fascinating devatas who came from the tree. He acknowledged their presence with a brief glance. However, he seemed more interested in playing than in the demigods. The demigods had wonderful exchange with Krishna and offered praise to the Lord while the Lord prayed. So we can just imagine wonderful prayers are being uttered by these devatas, and Krishna is playing with the rope. In their bewilderment, the demigods just shook their heads and kneeled before Krishna and said, "We cannot understand your lordship. In trying to do so, we become confused and disoriented. Therefore, it is better that we simply offer our obeisances unto you and chant your names and glories." Krishna then stopped playing and turned his full attention to the demigods. "You are right. I am the Supreme Lord. But if you fail to know me, then how can you say that I am who you think I am?" Some logic there applied by Krishna. This confused the demigods even more. Seeing their plight, Krishna showed mercy on the brothers and showed them his two-handed form with the flute. So at the moment, he didn't have a flute. He was a little baby, 2-year-old. Now, because the demigods were confused, who is this person? Is he the Supreme Lord? They're saying he is, but if they don't know him, how can they say they think they know him? So he showed them the two-handed form with the flute. The demigods were in ecstasy and then offered wonderful praise and prayers. Understanding that the Brijbasis will soon be coming due to the noise of the falling of the trees, the demigods asked Krishna's permission to depart. Before leaving, they requested that they become servants of the Gopas. Pleased by their humility, he advised them to go to Narad, and by his grace, he will fulfill their desires. So there you go. That's the mortar pulled by the Lord between the two trees, smashed the trees down. The two devatas, Nalakuvera, Manigriva, came out of those trees. They prayed to the Lord, who was playing with his rope. He also told them that they can ask for a boon, and they asked to be blessed with pure devotion. They also offered further prayers which made Krishna laugh as he was shackled to the mortar. He thought, "These are not really ropes, but the bonds of my mother's love. While I am bound by her love, demigods are bound by Maya, my Maya." So Krishna is explaining about the Devata's position. They are also bound, but by Maya. Although they call me the Lord of Gokul, I am tied like a calf. What kind of Lord is that? While they praise me, the scolding of mother is much more pleasing. So the demigods were praising the Lord but he was more enjoying the chastisement of his mother. Krishna replied, "Your past life and Narad's kindness to you is well known to me. Had Narad not desired it, I would never have shown mercy to you offenders." So this is the mercy of Narad Muni. The devotee is so kind. It's more kinder than the Lord himself. That would have been contrary. That would have been contrary to everything I stand for. Because as soon as a devotee is offended, that's the end of that person. Only the devotee who has been offended can protect that devotee who has offended. And here, Narad Muni was offended by Nalakuver and Manigriva, but he forgave them and he blessed them with Krishna's seva. However, Narad was kind to you regardless of your offensive behavior and awarded you punishment that would bring you to your senses. He took away the source of your blindness, which was your wealth. But by Narad's mercy, you have already been freed from your bondage. Therefore, asking for my mercy, ask for my mercy gratuitously. Had you not seen Narad, you would not be seeing me. Hence, your suffering would have continued. So this is Krishna's giving them some wonderful gyan of the mercy of the devotee. Okay, Krishna wanted to wrap up his conversation with the two demigods so that he can get on with the more important matter of playing with the gopas. Raising his right hand in his gesture of blessing, Krishna said, "Nalkuver Manigriv, you both return home where your family is eagerly waiting you. As for your desire to be always observed in my service, I assure you that it will be fulfilled in a way that your domestic life will not pose an obstacle. Whatever you want will be fulfilled by Narad's desire. By his grace, you have developed love for me and thus attained the topmost goal of life. Keep Narad always in your heart, because I am always in his heart. You shall never be separated from me. Your material existence has now come to an end." Nalkuver and Manigriva were heartbroken to leave the Lord, but they had to. Bowing down one more time, the demigods turned and rose into the sky and sorrowfully looked back at Gokul, which had been their home for so long. And they left for heaven. So, this is the wonderful pastime showing the divinity of Krishna, the greatness of the Lord. Any questions? Any comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah. So this Leela has taken in the Treta Yuga, is it? Because they said they were in that position for 20,000 years. And Krishna has appeared 5,000 years back. So the Narad cursing them and that sort of episode must have happened during the Treta Yuga.
Dwapar Yuga. Because Dwapar Yuga is
Oh, Dwapar Yuga,
864.
sorry, yes, Dwapar is such a long period of time. Right.
Yeah, 864,000 years.
Yes,
Right.
sorry, yeah.
In Dwapar Yuga.
Dwapar.
Interesting how Narad Muni knows when the Lord is going to appear, where he's going to appear, and he positioned Nalakuver and Manigriva at the right place.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, very kind-hearted, very kind-hearted.
But then Krishna is sort of giving all the justice for what has happened to Narad Muniji, and that because of him I am here.
Yeah.
That in spite of being the supreme, he's sort of more sort of in favor of his devotee rather than taking the grace for himself.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And his devotee.
If it was not for Narad, he wouldn't have appeared and he would not have sort of given them this benediction of being freed by Krishna.
Yeah, that's correct.
Very nice. Very sort of a lesson for us as well.
Big lesson. Big lesson. Yes, it is. It is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. So, Damodar Lila ki jai.